Yeah, so the morning we were discussing, from yesterday evening actually, we were saying that we are going to explore the different dimensions of consciousness. And we stopped today because of some of the questions which were asked. Like, how do we proceed? I mean, this is all right, theoretically, yes, there must be consciousness, otherwise we'll be dead. And there must be consciousness in the plants, otherwise they will be dead. So, in this constant movement of consciousness, this whole universe exists because it's constantly moving, and so on. Now, from time immemorial, at least some individuals have been searching for ways and means to figure out how, if such a thing exists, we can go there. Or if such a thing exists here and now, as we discussed, is it possible to find it? If it is so, why are we not finding it? That's, I think, a very rational question. If it's there everywhere and it's also in us, why is it that we shut our eyes to? Why don't we see it? I mean, I think after morning session somebody might be able to see it now, I don't know. Yeah? But if we don't, why is it that one doesn't reach? And are there ways and means to explore and go into this? So this is what we are going to look at now in this 1 hour. And then tomorrow, if we find that there are ways and means, then we are going to experiment with them tomorrow. All experiments will be done except those with a mushroom. And so, because we have a mushroom which is more powerful than any mushroom that you can get from anywhere in Mexico. So, but it can't be sold. That's the only problem. Okay? Okay. So now I'm going to look at the different approaches to this understanding of this all-pervading consciousness and how individuals have over the ages tried to find it, also through drugs. You can't rule that out totally. Also, people have experimented and figured out that there is certainly something outside the understanding of our ordinary consciousness. We are not experimenting on that side, but there is such a thing also. And it's very interesting that even the ancient textbook on the practice of yoga, theory and practice of yoga, which is called the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, one of the earliest attempts to systematize the knowledge which was scattered around, says in one verse that samadhi is also possible through drugs. But with a corollary, it says that if it is done without, it will be better. Which always trying to say that altered states of consciousness are probably possible also that way. And they being very clear guys, they've said, Aushadhanani. With Aushadha also it's possible. The 2 sentences before that, it said, attainment of samadhi is possible also through meditation on Ishvara, on the concept of a supreme being. Ishvara pranidhanena va. That means also through Ishvara pranidhanena it is possible. And 2 lines later, that is also possible through Aushadha, through the drugs. So they are equating the Ishvara concept with the drugs. I mean, it's kind of close to each other. But the rest of the Yoga Sutras have nothing to do with God concept, God, Creator, Ishvara, nothing. Purely Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha. We will get to that tomorrow. What I am trying to say, even if you don't have belief in a kind of a supreme God, especially the thundering variety, you can still progress in yoga and find essence of consciousness. This is what I'm trying to say. So, let's look at one great person, one of the people who have approached this question in a different way. I'm not saying we should imitate them. It may not be possible. But it's a good case study to see how, of course, there were the great rishis who sang hymns looking at nature and being totally overawed by the wonderful things that are happening in nature. In the Rig Veda, which is the earliest Vedas we know of, there's a beautiful hymn of creation which says, oh, what was there before everything started? Was there chaos? Was everything one or many? Where did it start from? Perhaps he knows, or perhaps he does not. Can you imagine? 2000 years ago, for a rishi to say, perhaps he knows and perhaps he knows not. Which means this study and this exploration is based on understanding and not on faith. Faith has the big danger of being broken at any time. While if it is your experience, then nothing can happen. Why do we protect faith? Because we're afraid it's going to go. So the rishis of the Vedas, we are not personally concerned about whether you're an atheist or theist or anything. I'm just saying that there are different ways of looking at it, and it was a wide canvas in those days which was appropriated by religious people for its exploitation. It was not there then. So anyway, if you have any doubt about that, please, we can have a discussion on the Yoga Sutras if you like. There are these beautiful hymns to the waterfalls, to the mountains, to the forests, to the wind. Sanno mitrasyam varunaha, or the ocean, praising the ocean. Sanno bhavat varima shanna indro, praising the Lord of the senses. Praising Vayu, namaste Vayu. So these are all the tremendous energies of nature which are not under our control. Man has mastered some parts of these energies, but not everything in total. We have mastered how to make Vayu, the Lord of air, work for us. How? Tires without air, how will they move? And pressure pumps, so on. So man has tried his best to tap even those, but not in its ultimate sense. Man has also tapped the power that is hidden behind the electrons. How? Splitting the atoms. What happens? Nuclear fission. Tremendous energy which you can't even control once you press the switch. All that has happened. But in completeness, in reality, we have not been able to touch it because it's too much for this puny little brain. But the rishis have sung openly about the powers of nature. And therefore, one of the ways probably to explore this is to spend more time in places which are close to nature. If you walk up to the ocean, I'll come back to some other, but right now we'll start from somewhere. You walk up to the ocean, Varuna, and sit down quietly, not being disturbed by the sunbathers. So find a beach where there aren't many. And then you look at the waves and the ocean and the vastness of it, and the mind is blown. Or you go close to the mountains. It's beautiful. That's why rishis ran off to the forest, away from the concrete jungle. So you go nearer to the mountains. The mountains are not man-made. They come naturally. Nobody made them. Who can say who made this mountain? They're not man-made. And if you think somebody tinkered and made the mountain, I think we're living in some other century. Mountains are natural. So you go close to the mountain, and then you're awed, you're taken aback. You see the vastness of it. Or you go to a place like Redwood, where there are huge trees, you can't even see the top. Sometimes you just overawed, and there is a sense of, you gasp, because, mostly this doesn't happen because we always have the profit mentality. When you see a tree, you wonder how many tons of timber can come out of it. Once you remove that mentality from your mind and see things as they are, when the wind blows, when the fire, the forest fire in California, hundreds of people killed, so many, but it's so powerful. It's the god of fire, Agni. So, when you see this, your mind moves out of this narrow little petty, selfish circle in which it moves all the time. Even when we believe in the concept of God, mostly what we want is, may my son be okay, my daughter be okay, let them get married, there is no attempt at expanding the consciousness. So if you keep these things away and just look at the world as it is in the waking state, that itself can blow the mind and take it on to different levels. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Not easy, but not difficult either. One needs to work on it. The second, I want to give you an example of a great being, a great person, who looked into this question. But then, we cannot actually imitate this person because he had an unique experience when he was not meditating and while he was still young. Why? We don't know. But he had. That started his journey. A young man of 14, 15 years, one day he was lying down and he got this terrible feeling that he was going to die. Very urgent and immediate feeling that he was going to die. So he lay down on the cot and said, when one is dead, this is how the dead bodies lie on the cot. And put his hands on the side like this and closed his eyes. When people die, even after they're dying, they don't allow them to be in peace. They always put their hands together. So he lay down and human beings put it together and lay down saying, this is how dead bodies look when they're carried to the cremation ground. I'm dead. And he actually found that he was not there in his body but was looking at it, and he was different from the body. This was an experience which he got before he meditated or did anything. He was not practicing meditation then. No Ashtanga Yoga, nothing. The only habit he was that when he slept like a log. It was difficult to wake him up. Do you know his name? And then that set him thinking. And he said, well, I don't think I'm the body because I'm still alive. And this appears dead. Most of us would have said, no. We wouldn't have had that experience anyway at that age. Without any sadhana whatsoever. So he said, if I'm not this body, then what can I be? he got obsessed with that idea. If I am not the body, what can I be? I need to figure out. Now there are no instruments to figure out. So he set out on this journey, which was to go to a lonely place away from home. You can't meditate at home. One day he was sitting down, quite absorbed in trying to find this thread of, who's this? Where am I? What's my ID? I'm not this body, I'm convinced, so what am I? He said, it's like wearing clothes. If I wear my clothes, together with my clothes, I'm recognized as so-and-so. What if I take off the clothes and hang it somewhere? I'm different. My clothes are different. So, and then the mind, he said, I say my mind, so it can't be my mind. There must be something else. And so he set out and went off into the hills and the mountains and sat quietly, trying to figure this out. He had no guide. Now, one day he discovered his true identity was not the limited Ramana, but that infinite consciousness which we are saying we are trying to explore, and that is nowhere to be sought except in oneself, because that's one's true ID, and not the body or the mind or any of those other things which are. Figured it out. Now it's not possible for everybody to do that. We can study him, read him, but if you go to Tiruvannamalai, you'll find a lot of people sitting and saying, who am I, who am I? It doesn't work that way. It's a chant. You would as well say Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. It doesn't work. Who am I? So, in his case, he was actually looking for it, not asking, who am I? Who am I? That's not the way to figure out. You go within yourself and see, what is it that says I? Where does this come from? Where does it originate? And how, if it originates, why are we not identified with it normally? So that is one way. There are others, yogis, who figured out that the 5 senses which we have, the Pancha Indriyas, the 5 senses of perception, have their limits. They can't see things beyond a certain point. Everything, even sight. I can see up to a certain point, but beyond that I can't. I'm not equipped for that, so I need to use a telescope or a binoculars. So our senses are only that powerful with their limitations. The same with smell, with taste, with hearing. You see, you hear the bell ring, and then when the bell stops, would you think it stopped? But it's not stopped. Our ears are equipped only to sense a particular frequency. Beyond that, we can't sense it. The sound of the bell may be going on still. In fact, any sound made doesn't stop. It doesn't end. It goes on. But it goes beyond our frequency, so we cannot hear it. So, the rishis, the yogis, some of the yogis said that if the 5 senses cannot find it, is there any other way to find it? Because they were not people who had an experience of being not the body when they were young. They were normal people like you and me who decided that they have to figure out, is it possible to explore this? And they realized that can't be explored through the 5 senses, which are limited. Not only limited, at best limited, sometimes illusory. You can't believe what you see, right? You see someone who behaves so nicely, but deep down he may be a devil. We don't know. If you depend on the senses, we can't judge this. Right? So, Also, the objects that you see in front of you, we discussed this in the morning, they may not be what we think they are. No? Morning the sun is rising, we see it with our eyes. But really, does the sun rise? Does it? No. A schoolboy would tell you that it doesn't, that the world goes round. Right? So, hey, what happened to you?
I was mountain biking. A tree grabbed my handlebar and lost it. But it doesn't hurt.
Okay, that's fine. We're just discussing the self. It doesn't hurt you, I feel hurt anyway. So, let me get rid of Monet's pain. So, where were we? What were we saying? I'm keeping this like a hand rest. Yogis have a hand rest. I hope there's no electricity passing. Very soon, no, because I'll start shivering. We see the sun rising every day. That's what our eyes say. But the sun is neither rising nor setting. How much can we depend on the data provided by the sense organs? So therefore, the yogis said, if we cannot depend on the data that the sense organs provide and can't even find out what is there in this world properly, in biology, discovery started when the microscope was invented, because I can't find it. They said, are there some microscopes in us which can be activated so that we can discover the self which is within us, which of course can't be discovered by the sense organs. There's a beautiful Upanishad called the Kena Upanishad. It's called Who Upanishad. Kena means who. Again, very old, 1,000 years ago, the Kena Upanishad started by asking, who are you actually? What is your identity? Who is it that thinks when you say, I'm thinking? Is there someone? Is it the brain or is it something else? So it's called the Who Upanishad. It's beautiful. It starts with Kene Shetam Patati Prashitam Manaha. What is the first impulse that started this endless movement of the mind, of the chattering of the mind? Kena Prana Prathama Prayati Yuktaha. What is it that started the first impulse in organic matter to make life moving? Kene Shetam Vacham Mimam Vadanti. What is it that gave meaning to the words that we utter? You'll wonder, what is this about? Suppose I don't know a language and you say something, it doesn't affect me. You call me a fool, I don't know English, so what? I might think you're saying he's a good fellow. So, who is it that gives meanings to words? Chakshut Chotram Ka Udeva Yunakti. When you say I see, what is it that is actually seeing? When I say I hear, who is hearing? What's hearing? I mean, there is the instrument, of course, but, well, like you have a microphone, but who is speaking? I mean, you have a speaker, but who's hearing? So, it started with these questions. So the yogis said that if we cannot depend on the five senses, which are too finite and limited to understand the unlimited consciousness, if such a consciousness exists, then are there other ways to find out? Are there other instruments of perception that you can tackle? The whole science of yoga, I call it a science because it is a very systematic, step by step. Now when I say yoga, don't get into this usual idea that we're talking about Hollywood yoga, where we practice it to make ourselves hourglass shapes. And I'm talking about yoga as a complete science, not as the asanas. Of course, asanas are important, they are good, but we're talking about yoga as a complete thing, not as a small little thing. So, the yogis, therefore, started exploring this, and they figured out that there are other instruments of perception in the human system which are usually dormant, and which in most people are dormant, and which sometimes spontaneously awaken sometimes, but not always. And there are ways and means to systematically activate them. This is the science of yoga. And there are many textbooks on yoga, but the most important systematic presentation is by Patanjali, which is at least 600, 700 years old, maybe 100 years. Before that, there have been textbooks on yoga, but they're mostly found in the Upanishads here and there, in Katha Upanishad, Yajnavalkya Upanishad, and so on, and also in the teachings of the Yogacara school of Buddhism, which predates the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. But the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali post-date Shankara, the teacher of Advaita. They came after him. I'm sorry, they came before him. They predate Shankara, because somewhere along the line Shankara also tries to look at that. Sometimes say yes, sometimes criticizes with his sharp brain, and so on. So this is the whole body of literature which we have called the Yoga Sutras. Plus, there are the textbooks of the Nath Yogis, which is full of yogic techniques and yogic descriptions on how to activate the dormant organs of perception which we all have. And some of them, I'm saying this because it's my lineage, is the Nath Parampara, starting with Adinath, Matsyendranath, Gorakhnath, and so on. And Gorakhnath's magnum opus is something called the Siddha. You don't have to worry about the names. Siddha Siddhanta Paddhati, or the Goraksha Shataka, or the Garanda Samhita, Shiva Samhita. These are the textbooks. And of course, later on, the Hatha Pradipika. Somewhere along the line, people say, oh, Hatha Yoga is physical, Raja Yoga is higher. It's the meaning of the word Hatha simply means the positive and the negative. Ha represents the sun, and Tha represents the moon, and therefore it's the bringing together of the Ida and the Pingala. We'll go into that tomorrow. I don't know if they are coming together practically, but we'll look at it tomorrow. So, this is the science of yoga. So, is it truly a fact that there are other organs of perception? We need to look at this question. Or is it the fancy, the imagination of Patanjali and other sages who said, oh, perhaps there is something. Or really is there something? Now, here you should note that yoga, the practice of yoga, nowhere in the Yoga Sutras does Patanjali call it Ashtanga Yoga. Nowhere. People call it Ashtanga because it has 8 angas, 8 branches, but Patanjali doesn't call it. He says here begins the study of Kriya Yoga. Now, we're looking into this, whether there are other instruments of perception dormant in us. You know, we have an organ here, unless you have surgically removed it, in the right side of the abdomen, called the vermiform appendix. Small little thing like a worm here. And sometimes it gets septic and then you need an emergency operation, surgery. But nobody knows why it's there. It's considered a vestige organ. That means organ which has no use. We don't know still what it's used for, but there doesn't seem to be a function. And when it gets septic, then you need to cut it off. In the same way, there are other organs, other glands in the human system about which we are not so aware of, especially the endocrine system. Endocrine system are the ductless glands, of which the most important master gland is the pituitary gland, which is inside the head, most in the middle of the brain. Little towards the back is the pituitary. It's a master gland that operates everything. It decides how much hormone should be pumped in, how much dopamine should go in so that you feel good, how much dopamine should be put in, how much some other hormone should be, adrenaline should be pumped in so that you act in an emergency and so on. It's controlled by the pituitary. So, when the 15th chapter of the Gita says, there is an upside down tree, urdhvamulam matasyakam, whose roots are up above and branches down below, they're probably referring to the master gland pituitary, which is the root of everything, or the head, the crown, from where all commands are given. You don't know it. You think I'm working according to my will. When I see something which attracts me, there's a rush of hormones. It's the pituitary that controls it. Right. In the same way, of course, the pituitary is recognized as the master gland now. And moods are chemical, we know that now. Alter the chemistry and your moods are different. So, there's another little ductless endocrine gland which for around 80 years ago was considered a vestige organ, like the appendix. This is the little pineal gland. There's a small little pineal gland very close to the pituitary, almost under it, under the bottom, almost. And this is another little gland which was considered to be a vestige organ, useless. Nobody knows why it's there. 50 years ago or 60 years ago, they discovered that it indeed has a great function because it controls your sleep, the patterns of your sleep. In medical terms, it's called the circadian rhythm. But please believe me, there's no way you can accelerate the pineal gland by hitting a nail into your forehead. Not possible, because there's the latest thing is some people are going around with holes drilled in their skull, saying that they're going to touch the pineal glands, and rubbish and nonsense. There's nothing like that. It doesn't work. Anyway, so there is this pineal gland sitting there, and 60 years ago they suddenly realized, through experiment, you must give it to the scientists, that they do experiment, that it controls the circadian rhythm, as it is called. The sleep and the waking cycle, the rhythm, the pattern. When it becomes dark and when everything is quiet and you're lying down, especially if you're physically tired, then the pineal gland puts a small drop of melatonin into your bloodstream. Want to sleep. This is what happens. So even sleep is chemical. Now, what happens when you travel long distance in an aircraft? You're jet lagged. Jet lag is because the working of the pineal gland has gone wonky. The circadian rhythm has been disturbed. There's less melatonin in the system. So you go to the drugstore and you buy melatonin tablets and pop them. You're okay. Not a good thing to do. Better to allow it to come naturally. I have half a day's jet lag usually. Whichever distances I travel, I have jet lag. I'm not denying it, but it's very short, half a day. Because I start working immediately in about... So how do I do it? Go back to the pineal gland and say, hey, little more melatonin, please. This is the science of yoga. The yogis discovered that with your conscious mind, you can activate this through practice. And it also so happens that the third eye, which is usually drawn in pictures of yogis meditating, or, in India, Shiva is supposed to be the symbol of the meditating yogi. And you'll see that his eyes are closed and there is a small eye open here, please. You can't open them physically. Please don't get into these illusions. It's an inner organ that works, not the outer. So, if you, from the middle of the forehead, little above the eyebrows, if you draw a straight line, and from the middle of the crown of your head, if you draw a line down, they both meet, that's where the pineal gland is. So when you're fixing your attention here, you're actually through the amygdala that comes out from the limbic system. When you do pranayam, for instance, you vibrate the amygdala and the message is carried to the pineal. Deep down in the brain, see how intricate it is. And this is one of the organs of perception which are dormant, which is not awakened. This was discovered about 60 years ago, that it is a very important organ. But 100 years ago, Swami Vivekananda said that little pineal gland there, which they are saying is a vestige organ, is probably the stem of the Sahasrara chakra. How did he know? Now, just like the pineal gland, there are other centers in the system, basically in the parasympathetic nervous system, which takes over the control of our body in deep sleep. It works the circulation, it works the pumping of the heart, it works the digestive system, the parasympathetic. It takes over when we are asleep. We don't eat food and consciously say, hey, digest. We can't do it. Actually, all you can do is chew the food and swallow it. And even if you swallowing, you need peristalsis. If this doesn't work, then it's stuck in the throat. Chew, yes. Then the rest is taken care of with the parasympathetic system. And the brain, important organ. And so this is one center. Now you'll find that wherever there are these centers through which one can explore into the higher levels of consciousness. Now you see this. If the pineal gland, which is symbolized here, I think somebody said this in a different way and people didn't understand what he was saying when he said, therefore, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. It can't mean that one is blind in one eye. I think a wandering yogi who walked the streets of Jerusalem. Therefore, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. And we have an yogic exercise he described very nicely. People think it's about God. Knock and it shall be opened unto thee. So anyway, but he's not Hanuman, for God's sake. So, this these organs of perception, which are connected to the endocrine system and therefore also connected to the plexuses. If you look at the figure of the yogic anatomy, you will see that there are many plexuses coming from the parasympathetic and joining together. Anybody who knows physiology would know this. And where the plexuses are, there the so-called chakras, the centers of perception, are located. So the yogic system is a step-by-step movement, conscious awakening of these dormant instruments of perception, which normally are not, we don't need it in day-to-day life. Therefore they're dormant. But when we begin to understand that there are other levels of spiritual consciousness, we need to awaken these because the five senses cannot reach there. Now this is the process of yoga. So therefore it needs some disciplines. How to go about doing this? What kind of life can we lead to touch that? What kind of food do we eat? So what does that indicate? If the ultimate consciousness is going to be found by a human being, and if it depends on food and meditation and processes and breathing exercises and meditation, these are physical factors, right? So that means these physical factors are important so that one at some point transcends them. They are physical, of course. But they're important. Otherwise, why does somebody fast when one is doing a certain kind of spiritual practice? Because fasting brings about a chemical change in the human system and activates some centers and shuts down some. See? So they are very interlinked. So in the science of yoga, it's not as if the body is neglected. Moderation in food is there, but not starving. A yogi is a healthy human being because it's understood for a healthy body carries a healthy mind, and a healthy mind is essential to explore beyond and to activate the centers of perception. So tomorrow we are going to take up the practical ways and means which have been traditionally described by the great yogis in several textbooks. We are not going to take the textbooks because that will take many days of retreat. And then also see if, apart from the theoretical study of these methods, other ways we can practice so that we can figure out ourselves if this is possible. Because to touch that which is beyond, the only thing a human being can do is to touch it within oneself first. Once you have touched it inside, then you realize that it is also outside. It's not two things. It's only one. So first inside, and then you see, oh, it's also outside. First you see it's also in the human beings. Then you see it's also outside in this whole world. Once you discover that, then you don't have to sit down and close your eyes, because when your eyes are open, what's outside is also what is inside. Has anybody seen a picture of Ramana Maharshi with his eyes closed? No. Why? Because there is no need to go in. What is inside is also what is outside. But in the beginning, he might have closed his eyes. We don't have any photographs because he was not famous at that time. And one of the ways of transcending the ordinary mind and understanding that all-pervading consciousness is through silencing the chattering mind, which chatters from the time we are born till the time we die. After that, we don't know because we can't hear the chattering. But this much we know. There's this constant chatter going on. Tick, 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 tick. Is it possible that there is something when there is no chattering and everything is at rest? They say there is a possibility. I say there is a possibility. What you say depends on what you feel. Perhaps when that stops and when the mind is calm and quiet, is perhaps the tarmac from which your aircraft takes off to the higher levels of consciousness. Perhaps. So this is what we are going to look into. Tomorrow, is there a way out or are we just stuck in theories? While it's necessary to have a theoretical understanding, otherwise you don't know where you're going. There are people who don't understand this sometimes, rarely, and who come face to face with something happening and they think they're going crazy. So it's good to understand before we go into it. So therefore yoga is a practical system, step by step, systematic, so that you can explore, measure and then move forward. That we'll do tomorrow. It's 5 o'clock. So, now go and enjoy yourself. Sorry. There is this wonderful river out there. Hopefully some of you might come back tomorrow and say, I found it in the river. Oh, mountains. The key is to stop chattering. Maybe physically also. Too much. That's why many yogis go into silence. But please understand that silence is not speaking. That's one kind of silence, good exercise to rest your tongue and so on and save energy. But real silence is when the mind becomes silent. There is no chatter. There is no ingoing thought and there is no outgoing thought. And there is just what you might call a mental kumbhak. That's the aim of the physical kumbhak, holding of the breath. So, good luck. And thank you. We're going to look into this tomorrow. Okay, I want to go slowly, little by little. And beyond an hour, these things don't end. You probably soon subside into Shushupti, deep sleep, instead of Samadhi. So let's move. Thank you.